Welcome back, my weirdlings. We have stepped into quarter 2 of Raven's Lorecast, the season of thresholds. If quarter 1 was about origins, about where we come from, quarter 2 is about crossing. Crossing out of what no longer fits, crossing toward what is becoming, crossing the quiet line between survival and alignment. You don't have to be perfect to cross. You only have to be willing. So wherever you're listening from, I'm glad you're here. Because this quarter, we are not chasing perfection. We are practicing becoming. All right, weird ones. Wit, wisdom, witchcraft. Let's begin. Weird ones, come closer. Not because the world is dangerous tonight, but because it's loud. And this circle is quiet on purpose. Take a breath with me. In and out. Good. If you've got a candle, light it. If you don't, imagine the flame. Magic has never cared about tools. It has always cared about attention. Now listen. This is not a regular episode. This is one of our which is familiar episodes. One of the foundational lessons in this long, living path we're walking together. And that means tonight isn't about collecting information. It's about recognizing a truth you've always known. Because familiars aren't cute. They aren't accessories. They aren't aesthetic. They are threshold beings. They are guardians. They are devotion made visible. They are the kind of love that doesn't need words to be real. And if you've ever been chosen by an animal, if you've ever felt a creature press their body against yours like an oath, if you've ever looked into their eyes and felt something ancient look back, then you already understand the first rule of familiar magic. They don't just live with you, they keep you. Tonight's episode is called Which is Familiar? The Ones Who Wait at the Gate. And I want to start here with something that belongs to Raven's world, because the manor moves, not like a house moves, like a living thing moves. It drifts through time the way fog drifts through trees, quiet, deliberate, unstoppable. Rooms shifting, corridors lengthening, doorways appearing where there were none. Sometimes it settles somewhere new, like it's exhaling. Sometimes it relocates, like it heard a call none of us can hear. And the truth is, every time the manor moves, something changes. Not the bones of it, not the soul of it, but the air, the feeling, the tension at the edges. Because movement is a kind of threshold, and thresholds attract guardians, which brings me to them, to the ones you've seen, to the ones who stand in Raven's world with their paws planted like a boundary line. Artemis and Delilah. Artemis is named for the goddess, the huntress, yes, but more than that, protector of mothers and children, protector of the vulnerable, protector of the wild. She is the kind of presence that doesn't bark to prove she's powerful. She just stands there, and the world behaves accordingly. Delilah is smaller, but don't let that fool you. Some beings don't need size to hold power. Some beings hold it in their eyes, in their stillness, in the way they can watch a room and know instantly what belongs and what doesn't. Together, they are not pets. They are not background. They are not just dogs. They are threshold intelligence. They are the part of the manor that says, you may enter, or not today. And if that sounds dramatic, let me say it plainly. Humans have always understood this. Across cultures and centuries, animals have been recognized as guardians of the liminal, protectors of the doorway, companions of the witch, witnesses to ritual, keepers of the unseen. Not because animals are magical in some cartoon way, but because animals are honest in a way humans forget how to be. They don't pretend they're fine when they're not. They don't talk themselves out of their instincts. They don't ignore energy. They respond. They protect. They stay. And that staying, that loyalty, that watchfulness, that is sacred. So tonight, weird ones, I want you to do something with me. Not a spell, not a performance, a recognition. If you have an animal near you, a dog, a cat, any creature with breath and heartbeat, place your hand on them just for a moment. Feel the warmth, feel the life, feel the steady, wordless presence. And if you don't have one, if you've lost one, if you're still waiting for the one who will find you someday, then place your hand on your own chest, because your body is an altar too, and you are still worthy of protection, still worthy of companionship, still worthy of love that doesn't demand you earn it. Now whisper this with me. May what guards me be blessed. May what loves me be honored. May what watches over me be seen. Because in a world that teaches you to be hard, to be productive, to be constantly performing, a familiar is one of the last pure forms of devotion we have left. And tonight, we're going to talk about that devotion as magic, not metaphor, magic. We're going to talk about what it means to be chosen, what it means to be protected, what it means to have a guardian who doesn't need your words, only your truth. And we're going to do it the Raven way. Grounded, reverent, historically literate, emotionally honest, and utterly uninterested in pretending this bond is anything less than holy. Take one more breath with me. In and out. Good. Now, let's go into the lore. My weirdlings, let's talk about familiars. Not the aesthetic version, not the witch starter kit version. The real thing, the old thing, the kind of bond that doesn't need anyone's approval because it existed long before anyone had the language to explain it. Tonight we're talking about dogs, and I want to start with a sentence that might sound dramatic until you've lived it. Every dog is a door. Not a metaphorical door like new beginnings and fresh starts. I mean a real door, a threshold, a living boundary between the life you were living and the life you're about to enter, the self you show the world and the self you try to hide, what you can say out loud and what your body carries in silence. Because dogs don't just accompany us, They initiate us. They change the shape of our days. They rearrange the furniture of our hearts. And sometimes they save our lives in ways we can't fully explain without sounding like we're writing poetry in a thunderstorm. So let's do this Raven style. Grounded, reverent, historically literate, emotionally honest. No fluff, no sensationalism, just the truth. The familiar isn't a pet, it's a relationship with teeth. In modern life, we use the word pet like it's neutral, but pet implies ownership. A familiar is not owned. A familiar is a relationship. A familiar is presence, protection, pattern recognition, loyalty, witness, devotion. A familiar is the one who stays close enough to learn the sound of your real breathing. Not your I'm fine breathing, your actual breathing. And if you've ever lived with a dog, you already know the first sacred truth. Dogs do not love you for what you produce. They do not love you for your resume. They do not love you for your usefulness. They do not love you for your performance. They love you because you are you. And in a world that constantly demands you earn your right to exist, that kind of love is not small. It is revolutionary. It is spiritual. It is magic. Now, let's get historically honest for a minute. Across cultures and centuries, dogs show up in the places humans fear most and need most, the thresholds. They guard gates, crossroads, graveyards, temples, homes, the boundary between living and dead, the boundary between safety and danger, the boundary between mine and not mine. Even if you don't know the mythology by name, you know the archetype, the dog at the door, the dog who senses what we can't, the dog who knows when something is wrong before we do, the dog who stands between you and harm. And that's why dogs are so often tied to the underworld in lore, not because they're dark, but because they understand boundaries. They understand what belongs where. They understand when something crosses a line. And that, weird ones, is familiar magic. Not because they're mystical creatures, because they are truthful creatures. Now let's talk about Artemis. And I'm going to say this plainly. Artemis is not just named after a goddess. She is named after a role. Because Artemis, the goddess, was not simply the hunt. She was the protector of the vulnerable, the guardian of mothers and children, the one who walked the wild places and did not apologize for her power. So when a dog carries that name, you feel it in the bones of her presence. Artemis energy is watchful, territorial in a sacred way, protective without being chaotic, calm until it's not. A line drawn in the dirt that says, not past this. She is the kind of being who doesn't need to bark to be heard. She just stands there, and the world adjusts. And that is what guardians do. They don't need applause. They need clarity. And then there's Delilah. And listen, some of the most powerful guardians I've ever known weren't the biggest. They were the ones who watched, the ones who noticed, the ones who tracked energy like a bloodhound tracks a trail. Delilah is the kind of familiar who reminds us protection doesn't always look like force. Sometimes it looks like perception. Sometimes it looks like sitting in the doorway like a sentry, following you room to room like a shadow, staring at a corner until you realize you've been ignoring your own discomfort, climbing into your lap at the exact moment your mask slips. Dogs don't always protect with teeth. Sometimes they protect with presence. They make it impossible for you to abandon yourself. Now, here's where this gets intimate. Dogs open doors inside us, and the first door they open is the body, because dogs are embodied creatures. They don't live in theory, they live in scent, sound, muscle, timing, breath, instinct, movement. So when you share your life with a dog, you are constantly being pulled back into the real world. You can't float away forever. You have to come back to feeding, walking, cleaning, caring, responding. And that's not mundane. That's devotion. That's ritual. That's sacred repetition. And if you've been through trauma, grief, depression, anxiety, burnout, if you've been through anything that disconnects you from your body, a dog will quietly, relentlessly guide you back. Not with words, with needs, with touch, with the simple truth. You are here. You are alive, and I am with you. Dogs do not live in the past the way humans do. They do not spiral into memory the way we do. They do not rehearse conversations that happened 10 years ago. They live now. And when you love a dog, you are constantly being invited into now. The walk, the bowl, the sunbeam on the floor, the sound of their nails on the tile, the weight of their head on your knee. And that presence becomes medicine, not because it fixes everything, but because it reminds you you are still in the world. Even when your mind tries to leave it, even when your heart tries to close, even when your spirit feels like it's hovering outside your body just to get through the day, dogs pull you back again and again, not with pressure, with devotion. Now, Raven's world has a particular kind of truth woven into it. The manor is alive. It moves. It shifts. It responds. And in a living house, thresholds matter even more, because a moving home needs guardians. It needs watchers. It needs beings who know the difference between visitor and intruder, change and threat, movement and invasion. So when Artemis and Delilah exist in that world, they are not just dogs in the story. They are part of the architecture. They are part of the ward. They are the living intelligence of the home. And if you've ever had a dog who seemed to patrol your house at night, who checked the doors, checked the windows, checked the corners, you already understand. Dogs don't just live in your home. They keep it. They claim it. They anchor it. They make it safer just by being awake inside it. Now, here's the part I'm going to say carefully, because we're not sensationalizing anything here, but we are also not insulting what humans have known forever. Dogs notice things. They hear frequencies we don't. They smell what we can't. They track subtle shifts in energy and emotion and presence. Sometimes they respond to a car turning onto your street before you hear it. a stranger at the door before you sense it, a storm shifting pressure in the air, your own rising panic before you've admitted it to yourself. And sometimes they respond to things that feel less explainable: a stare into nothing, a sudden growl at an empty hallway, a refusal to enter a room. You can interpret that however your worldview allows: science, spirit, instinct, trauma awareness. But the truth remains: dogs are threshold aware. And in witchcraft, real witchcraft, the kind rooted in history and lived experience, threshold awareness is one of the oldest skills there is. Because a witch is not someone who does spells. A witch is someone who notices, who senses, who reads the room, who reads the air, who reads the silence. And dogs are born fluent in that language. Now we're going to talk about the hardest door: grief. Because loving a dog means making an agreement you don't get to break. You will outlive them. And that truth is brutal. But it's also sacred. Because dogs teach us the kind of love that is not afraid of loss. They love anyway. They stay anyway. They give themselves fully anyway. And when they leave, they take something with them. But they also leave something behind: a new capacity in you, a widened heart, a tenderness you didn't know you could survive, a grief that proves you were blessed. And in the spiritual sense, grief is not a punishment. Grief is a doorway. It opens you into deeper love, deeper reverence, deeper truth. And if you've ever lost a dog, you know that bond doesn't end. It changes form, but it does not vanish. Because devotion like that doesn't just disappear. It becomes part of your nervous system, part of your memory, part of your soul's architecture. Here's another truth, my weirdlings. Dogs don't just see who you are. They see who you were before the world told you to shrink. They see the child in you. They see the softness in you. They see the wildness in you. They see the part of you that still wants to run, to laugh, to roll in sunlight, to exist without apology. And they call that part back. They remind you that you are not only a worker, not only a caretaker, not only a survivor. You are a creature too. You are alive too. You deserve joy too. And if you've spent your life denying yourself pleasure, rest, softness, play, a dog will look at you like you're speaking nonsense. Because to them, life is walks, sniffs, sunbeams, warm bodies, loyalty, food, play, sleep, return. Simple, sacred, true. And being near that truth changes you. Now let's be honest about the other side. Familiar bonds can be fierce. Dogs will mirror your nervous system. They will reflect your stress. They will absorb your grief. They will protect you sometimes in ways you didn't ask for. Because protection isn't always soft. Sometimes it's teeth. Sometimes it's growling. Sometimes it's the dog who stands between you and a stranger and says, no. And if you've ever had a dog do that, you know the feeling. Not fear, relief. Because something in you recognized, I am not alone. That is the magic, not the bark, the relief, the safety, the belonging. Now I want to clarify something, because I know some of you are listening and thinking, okay, Raven, so is every dog a familiar? And my answer is, not necessarily. But every dog has the capacity to be a threshold being in your life. A familiar relationship is marked by mutual recognition, emotional attunement, protective devotion, a sense of we belong together that goes deeper than convenience, a bond that changes your life, not just your routine. Some dogs are companions, some dogs are healers, some dogs are guardians, some dogs are all three. And sometimes a familiar is the one who arrives when you're standing at the edge of yourself, when you're about to change, when you're about to break, when you're about to begin again. And they say without words, I'll go with you. That is familiar magic. So when I say every dog is a door, this is what I mean. Dogs open you into the present moment, embodied living, devotion without performance, protection without apology, love that doesn't demand you earn it, grief that expands the heart instead of closing it, instinct that cuts through illusion, home as sanctuary, the sacredness of being a creature in a living world. They open you into the part of life that cannot be explained, only lived. And for witches, weirdlings, seekers, skeptics with open hearts, that kind of lived truth matters. Because witchcraft is not about believing in magic. It's about recognizing what is already real. And dogs? Dogs are one of the realest things we get. So if you're listening tonight and you've been feeling unsteady, if you've been doubting yourself, if you've been stuck between what your mind says and what your body knows, then let this be your reminder. Your instincts are not broken. They're just quiet. And tonight's sky is the kind that brings instinct back online. A waning crescent moon, a comet at the edge of dawn, Mercury rising like a message, a sky suspended between illusion and instinct. So let's step outside together. Let's look up. And let's read what the night is trying to tell us. My bright ones, tonight's sky is doing that thing it does sometimes, where it doesn't just look beautiful, it feels like a message. Not a message written in words, a message written in timing, in pattern, in that quiet, feral knowing that lives in the body before the mind ever catches up. And for a familiar episode, for a threshold episode, for a story about the ones who stand guard at the gates of your life, this sky is perfect. Because April 12th, 2026, is a night suspended between worlds, between what you think you know and what you can feel is true, between illusion and instinct. So let's open the sky like a grimoire, not to predict your future, but to help you remember what your nervous system already knows. Tonight, the moon is a waning crescent, lit at about 29%. This is not the loud moon. This is not the look at me moon. This is the moon that speaks in half light, the moon that hides more than it shows, the moon that makes the world feel softer at the edges. And waning crescent energy isn't about building, it's about paring down. It's about what remains when you stop performing for the world. It's the moon of release, quiet truth, instinct, thresholds, the final exhale before the new moon begins again. This is the moon that asks, what do you know when no one is watching? What do you trust when the room is dark? What stays loyal when everything else falls away? That's familiar energy, not cute animal companion energy, guardian energy. Now let's talk about the wildest part of this night sky. Comet Pan-STARRS C-2025 R3. Around April 11th and 12th, observers in the northern hemisphere may have a real chance to spot it before sunrise, and depending on brightness and conditions, it may even be visible without a telescope. A comet is not a planet. A comet is not a steady light. A comet is a visitor. It arrives unannounced. It changes the feeling of the sky. It doesn't ask permission. It is a moving threshold. Historically, comets have been treated like omens, sometimes feared, sometimes revered, sometimes misunderstood. But here's what I want you to hold, weird one. Comets don't have to mean disaster. Sometimes a comet means this: something is passing through your life to wake you up. Something is arriving to say, pay attention. You are not asleep anymore. You are being called back to your own path. And for a familiar episode, a comet is exactly the kind of sky sign that fits the theme. Because familiars are often the same kind of messenger. They show up and suddenly you realize you weren't alone. You were never alone. This is also a night with an excellent pre-dawn window for Mercury, because we're just after Mercury's greatest western elongation earlier in the month. Mercury is the planet of messages, communication, pattern recognition, meaning making, the thin thread between thought and instinct. But Mercury at dawn is different. It's not the loud voice of the day. It's the first whisper. It's the sentence you hear in your bones before your brain starts arguing. Mercury before sunrise says, listen before the world gets in your head. Because the world will always give you 1,000 reasons not to trust yourself. But Mercury at dawn says, no, the message is still here. You can still hear it. And if you can hear it, you can follow it. Venus is in Taurus, grounded, steady, sensual, rooted. This isn't Venus as fantasy. This is Venus as devotion, stability, touch, comfort that isn't shallow, pleasure that is medicine. Venus in Taurus reminds us that love is not only poetry. Love is the bowl of water refilled, the blanket placed over your legs, the body sitting beside you in silence, the presence that stays. And that is familiar truth, because a familiar doesn't love you as a concept. They love you as a creature. They love you as a living thing who needs companionship to survive. Jupiter is in Cancer, bright in the evening sky. And Jupiter in Cancer is big medicine for this episode because Cancer is the sign of home, protection, emotional memory, lineage, belonging. Jupiter expands whatever it touches. So Jupiter in Cancer expands the theme of home as sanctuary, not home as a place that looks pretty, home as the place your nervous system can finally unclench, the place your spirit can stop scanning for danger, the place you can be soft without being punished for it. And that, weird ones, is exactly what a familiar creates. A familiar is not decoration. A familiar is home made alive. Now, here's the deeper layer. Saturn is in early Aries. Neptune is also in early Aries. That's important because Saturn is structure, Neptune is dream, and Aries is ignition. So, what happens when structure meets dream at the beginning of the zodiac wheel? You get the question, what if the life you want is real, but only if you build it? Saturn says commit, Neptune says believe, and Aries says begin. This is not manifestation culture. This is something older. This is the sacred tension between imagination and responsibility, longing and action, desire and devotion. And if you've ever loved an animal deeply, you already know this truth. Love isn't just a feeling. Love is a practice. Love is a vow you live out in small moments. Pluto continues its slow transit through Aquarius. Pluto is transformation. Aquarius is the future, the collective, the strange, the chosen family. Pluto in Aquarius doesn't care about tradition for tradition's sake. It asks, what is real? What is alive? What is honest? What bonds are chosen and therefore sacred? And this matters because familiars are not always normal love. Sometimes they are soul level bonds that people who haven't lived it won't understand. And that's fine. We don't need them to. We're not here to justify devotion. We're here to honor it. So when you pull it all together, this is what April 12th becomes. A waning crescent moon, thin and instinctive. A comet, wild, temporary, undeniable. Mercury at dawn, message and clarity. Venus in Taurus, loyalty and embodied love. Jupiter in Cancer, home, protection, pack. Saturn and Neptune in Aries, dream made real through commitment. This is a sky that says something is stirring at the threshold. And the question is not, what does it mean? The question is, what do you do when you feel it? Because the familiar doesn't ask you to analyze. The familiar asks you to notice, to listen, to trust the part of you that knows the difference between fear and warning, fantasy and truth, noise and instinct. So here's your celestial ritual for tonight, my bright ones. Not complicated, not performative, just real. If you can, step outside for 30 seconds. Look up. Find the moon, thin as a secret, and whisper, I release what isn't mine. I trust what returns. I follow what protects me. And if you have a familiar in your life, a dog, a cat, a creature, a presence, place your hand on them or picture them and say, you are the door I didn't know I needed. Because some guardians come with claws, some come with wings, and some come with fur and a heartbeat that keeps time with yours until you remember how to live again. Weird ones, welcome to the part of the ritual where devotion becomes physical. Not theoretical, not symbolic in the abstract, not something you believe in, something you do. Because if familiars teach us anything, it's this: love is not a concept. Love is repetition. Love is the bowl refilled, the leash clipped, the door opened, the hand on fur, the quiet check-in that says, you're safe, I'm here, we're together. And before there were temples, there were hearths. Before there were priests, there were dogs sitting by the fire, watching us try to feed ourselves, watching us try to survive winter, watching us try to become human. Even now, every time you stir a bowl or preheat an oven, a little part of that ancient story begins again. Dogs are still our familiars, only the work has changed its costume. They search collapsed buildings for survivors, padding across dust and wire where humans can't go. They track missing children through forests, reading invisible maps of scent our eyes will never understand. They walk the sterile halls of hospitals, lowering heart rates with a single sigh. They sit beside veterans who can't sleep, guiding them through the dark. They steady the hands of autistic kids learning to reach out. They guide the blind through traffic and the grieving through silence. They do what witches do. They sense what's broken. They hold the boundary. They bring us back to ourselves. That's not obedience. That's collaboration. That's magic in muscle and breath. So tonight we make an offering, something simple, nourishing, made by hand. A recipe, yes, but also a vow. A ritual of gratitude for the ones who stand at the gate of your life and say, not past this, not to her, not to this house. This is the offering at the door, and it's dog safe, accessible, and adjustable, because kitchen witchery in Raven's Lorecast is always optional, never moralized, and never about perfection. It's about intention. Let's begin. The offering is dog-safe treats. Threshold biscuits for your familiar. Here are the ingredients with easy swaps included. 1 cup rolled oats, ground into flour or left whole. 1/2 cup unsweetened pumpkin puree or mashed banana. 1/4 cup natural peanut butter, no xylitol ever. 1 egg or 2 tablespoons flaxseed gel for vegan witches. Optionally, you can add a pinch of dried parsley, which gives fresh breath and blessing, and or a pinch of turmeric, which is anti-inflammatory and golden protection. Preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 175 degrees Celsius. Now here's the secret. This recipe is intentionally simple because the spell is not in the complexity. The spell is in the act, the hands, the attention, the gratitude. I honor the one who guards my life. I honor the one who knows my name without language. I honor the one who stays. Shape the dough into small biscuits. You can make little rounds, small bones, rough, imperfect coins, tiny crescents if you want to mirror the moon. But I love the coin shape for this episode because coins are offerings. Coins are thresholds. Coins are what we place at the edge of something to say, I respect the boundary. Place them on parchment, and as you set each one down, speak one simple blessing for protection, for loyalty, for safe return, for home. Bake for 20 to 25 minutes. And while they bake, let yourself feel this. This is not extra. This is not silly. This is not you being dramatic. This is you participating in an ancient human truth. We have always fed the ones who fed our souls. We have always made offerings to the guardians, even if we didn't call it that, even if we called it just treats. Your familiar doesn't need a ritual performance. They need your presence. And this is presence. When the biscuits smell warm and golden, like gratitude, you'll know they're ready. Let them cool completely before offering. Now this part matters. Take one cooled treat in your palm. Hold it like it's sacred, because it is. Breathe across it once, not dramatically, just softly, like you're warming your hands in winter. And then do one of these, depending on what feels true for you. Option A, offer it at the literal door. Stand at your front door, or your bedroom door, or the doorway of whatever space you call yours. Hold the treat at chest level and say, Guardian of my home, thank you. Then give it to your familiar. Option B, offer it at the threshold of your body. If you can't do the door ritual, do this instead. Kneel or sit. Place your hand on your familiar's chest where the heartbeat lives and say, you are the one who knows when I'm not okay. You are the one who stays anyway. You are the one who guards my life. Then offer the treat. Option C, for the witches who are grieving. If your familiar has passed, if the bowl is empty and your heart still reaches for them, you can still do this ritual. Place the treat outside beneath the sky or crumble it into the earth and whisper, I remember you. I honor you. I carry your devotion forward. Because love does not stop being love just because the body is gone. And familiar bonds, they don't end. They change form. Now, whether you offered it at the door or at the heart, place your hand on your familiar one more time and speak this blessing. May you be strong. May you be safe. May you be held. May you always know you are loved. And then this final line. This is the line that seals the ritual. As you guard me, I will guard you. Because that's the pact. That's the sacred exchange. Not ownership, relationship, not control, devotion. If you want to extend the ritual without making it complicated, refresh your familiar's water, cold, clean water, and as you place the bowl down, whisper, "May your path be clear. May your senses stay sharp. May your body be blessed. May your spirit rest." Sometimes the most powerful spell is the one that looks like care. These treats keep well, and that matters because devotion is not a one-night performance. It's a practice. Use them for post-walk gratitude, grounding after hard days, reward after training, a small ritual before sleep, a moment of reconnection when life gets loud. And if your familiar is not food motivated, that's okay. The treat is not the point. The point is that you paused, you noticed, you honored the bond. That's the magic. Weird ones, there is a reason dogs have followed humans through every age. Not because we're in charge, but because something in them recognized something in us, and something in us recognized something in them. A shared devotion, a shared survival, a shared vow. So tonight, you made an offering at the door, not because you had to, because you chose to. And that choice, that is witchcraft. That is love. That is pack magic. Weird ones, take a breath with me. In and out. Good. Now listen. I want to close this episode the way it deserves to be closed. Not with a cute little bow, but with the truth. A familiar bond is not a novelty. It is not a vibe. It is not a quirky personality trait you add to your spiritual identity. It is devotion. It is relationship. It is sacred loyalty written in heartbeat and breath. And if you have ever been loved by a dog, really loved, then you know what I mean when I say they don't just keep you company. They keep you alive. Sometimes literally. Sometimes in the quieter ways that still count. By pulling you out of bed when grief makes your bones heavy. By making you go outside when your mind wants to fold in on itself. By leaning against you like a wordless spell that says, "Stay, breathe, I'm here." And I need you to hear me clearly tonight, weird ones. That kind of love is not small. That kind of love is not lesser because it isn't human. It is ancient. It is honest. It is one of the last pure forms of devotion we have left in a world that keeps trying to turn love into a transaction. Dogs do not love you because you earned it. They love you because you are theirs, because you are pack, because you are home. And for some of you listening, I know this is hitting a tender place because your familiar isn't here anymore, because the leash is hanging unused, because the bowl is gone, because the house is too quiet in the places their footsteps used to live. And if that's you, I want you to know something that you don't have to believe for it to be true. Love like that does not vanish. It does not dissolve into nothing. It becomes part of you. It rewires your nervous system. It teaches your body what safety feels like. It leaves a mark on your spirit that time cannot scrub away. Grief is the proof you were blessed, and the blessing still counts. So tonight, whether your familiar is curled beside you right now or lives only in memory, I want to offer you a vow, a pack vow. Not the kind you say once, the kind you live. Say it with me, out loud if you can. I honor the ones who guard me. I honor the ones who stay. I honor the ones who know my truth without words. Now place your hand on your chest. Feel your heartbeat, that steady drum that says, you are still here. And speak this next part like a spell, because it is. May I trust my instincts. May I listen when my body whispers. May I recognize protection when it arrives. Because that's what familiars teach us. Not just love, discernment, the ability to feel the difference between fear and warning, fantasy and truth, noise and instinct. And if this episode did nothing else tonight, I hope it reminded you of this. You are allowed to be protected. You are allowed to be loved without earning it. You are allowed to belong. Now I want to leave you with one final image, a piece of Raven's world, but also a piece of real life. A doorway, a threshold, and a guardian waiting there. Not because they're suspicious of the world, but because they are devoted to you. Because they were made for this. Because their love is not abstract. It is practical. It is fierce. It is loyal. It is the kind of love that stands between you and the dark and says, not past me. So here is your final line, your Raven line, your power line. Say it like you mean it. I am not alone at the threshold. I am guarded. I am loved. And now, weird ones, we seal the circle. One breath in, one breath out. And with that exhale, whisper, the gate is watched, the home is held, the bond is blessed. May what protects you be protected. May what loves you be honored. And may you never forget, even on your loneliest nights, that devotion is real. And some of it has 4 legs and a heartbeat. If tonight stirred something in you, if a story caught, if a ritual settled into your bones, if a truth followed you into the quiet, that's the work. Quarter 2 is about thresholds, and thresholds aren't destinations, they're decisions. If you'd like to keep walking with me between episodes, you can find Raven's Lorecast on Facebook, Blue Sky, Twitter, Pinterest, and TikTok. You can find me on Instagram at ravens_lore_cast. These are where the conversation continues, the visuals unfold, and the circle stays open. If you're called to go even deeper, the Patreon door is there when you're ready. No pressure, no chasing. Just another threshold you can step through when it feels true. Until next time, wit, wisdom, witchcraft. See you at the doorway, my weirdlings.